So, Doctor Who fan, I know what you're thinking. I know what you think is. I know you're going to ask me about it. You're going to ask me about how I feel the closing moment of this story, the closing moments of the reality world. We might as well start with that. This is the conversation that is going to be talked about for the next week. Probably for weeks, there's going to be a lot of conversation about it. So I know that there's going to be a lot of Doctor Who fans are going to be wondering what do I make of all this? What do I make of this turn of events that has occurred in the story? All right, and for those who not so sure what we're discussing here, what the other Whovians are asking me to react to, essentially we had a unfortunate shocker, probably a shocking moment of the story was the fact it was indeed confirmed in tonight's episode. Ncuti Gatwa has indeed left the series after 2 series. He has officially left Doctor Who. The rumors that the Daily Mirror put it out in the weeks leading up to the finale, all of that was true about the fact that Ncuti was leaving. And in fact, they even reported it back in February. They even said there was talks that he wanted to pursue Hollywood offers. I would imagine there might be some truth into this. We're not too entirely sure mainly because Ncuti has really he luckily has commented today, shocking for the farewell. So he obviously remained quiet because he knew this scene was going to come out. So luckily he did speak up about this. Yeah, it seems as though from my understanding, he left because he wanted to pursue other things, or at least that's how it's being phrased, is that he wanted to move on to do stuff in America, become a Hollywood star, etc. And he wasn't fired as most of us were thinking he was because of the whole Eurovision stuff. So it doesn't look like he was fired. He actually decision to pretty much leave the show. So it looks like he may have made that decision pretty early on in the filming of series 2. So it looks like yes, he did go on board with this idea of wanting to leave after 2 series. I'm going to be totally honest, but I feel Ncuti made a mistake about leaving because I honestly believe he could have had more than just 2 series as a New Who Doctor, and to me it doesn't feel. I think most fans will probably agree. It feels odd me to say goodbye to him this soon, considering how established he is in the role. He was pretty much in the role. He was in the zone this series. I mean, you can look at all the majority of the episodes from this series, and he was in the zone. He was doing fantastic run as the 50th Doctor. He had some really good bangers this year in terms of the scripts. He killing it in terms of his performance. Come from to see him do probably his best work this year to then all of a sudden leave the role this soon kind of just feels feels like it's too soon to me. It feels like he's leaving too soon before he have a chance to keep releasing banger episodes after banger episodes. And I felt like Ncuti could have done at least maybe another 2 more years, and maybe I would be ready for a new Doctor by this point. I feel like it's too soon. I feel like him leaving the 2 series was too soon for him to leave, and I think he could have done another 2 more series, and I think we would have been a little bit. I think we would have been ready by then to say, okay, let's move forward. Yeah, I feel gutted for him because at the same time of like, okay, at the same time of the fact that I feel gutted because he was really enjoying the role. Go and watch Doctor Unleashed, which you'll find on BBC iPlayer if you're in the UK. I'm sure, and you can watch stuff on YouTube on Doctor Unleashed if you want to see some clips of his interviews from Doctor Unleashed. But you could clearly see in Doctor Unleashed that Ncuti Gatwa was enjoying this role. He was really loving Doctor Who. He really loved to play this character. He was loving it. For him to enjoy this role so much to now leave after 2 series, just something doesn't sit right with me with that. It just doesn't sit right. It feels like this decision was forced on him. Kind of does. It kind of feels like even though he may have decided, he may have wanted to pursue Hollywood stuff, does feel like he was pressured, or at least that's how it trained to me. It's almost like it's giving signals like like, oh, he was forced out of this role. Like somebody talked him out of this. And it just, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. How I feel about somebody choosing to talk Ncuti out of the role of being the Doctor too serious. Whoever told him don't clearly understand. If he was to stay on for 2 more series, fans would have been satisfied after that. And I think somebody who was telling Ncuti clearly didn't get that message, didn't clearly understand how the audience worked, kind of just told him, yeah, why don't you just leave after 2 series? Because that makes sense to us. But it doesn't make sense to the fans, if you see what I mean. And it just, I don't know, I feel like somebody forced him into this, and I've gutted if there was some truth into that, because really come across like that. It feels like if it is a corporate move, then clearly whoever's in charge of the corporate side of Who is probably out of touch. They really think getting rid of Ncuti so quickly will resolve rating problem. Then you're an absolute fool to think that way, because clearly do not know how television works. Just saying. But yeah, I just I just feel like somebody in the high ups has talked him out of this, and especially when he was saying goodbye to the cast and everything, it really comes across that way. It really does. It just feels like it was like a forced decision. We're losing track a little bit here, but yeah, Ncuti Gatwa leaves after 2 series, so that's one thing we got confirmed from this story. But that's not the big talking point. The real big talking point is the fact what came after Ncuti's final bits of scenes that he did as the Doc, because after he said goodbye to Belinda, and also when he was saying goodbye to Belinda, the moment when he said, oh, I hope I'll see you again, but not like this, I instantly knew this was going to lead to a regeneration. The fact that he said that, because previous Doctors have said that, and especially Christopher Eccleston said when he was about to regenerate into David Tennant, so I knew full well this was a regeneration scene. The way he paid homage to Christopher Eccleston's line before he regenerated into David Tennant, so I knew full well this was indeed leading into a regeneration. As I said, it leads to a regeneration. Who comes out of the other side? Related to a Reddit leak that happened around the time when the Wish World was coming out. A Reddit leak came out, insider who said that the 16th Doctor was cast and it was a female and a familiar face. They were right. Turns out the familiar face they were referring to was Billie Piper. And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. If you're somebody who's watched Doctor Who, you watched especially the RTD1 era, particularly the Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, know what Billie Piper represents. She represents as Rose Tyler, the companion that the Doctor falls in love. We could pretty much establish that as a storyline that we saw when Doctor Who first came back. To have her as the Doctor now is now kind of, what does this mean for the whole Rose Tyler stuff? Now that she's the Doctor, does that mean we are supposed to forget that she's Rose Tyler? Or are we going to now establish that the Doctor can now regenerate into companions now? To me, that's kind of the narrative here, is that it seems like, I mean, I'm still kind of debating whether this was a Russell T Davies decision or whether this was a BBC decision. I'm not entirely sure who to go for here, who to really question in terms of who I believe is in charge of this decision. I feel like we're now going to be probably in a situation where we're going to have a similar situation to what happened when Peter Capaldi came on and they did that whole plot line of why did the Doctor have this face? I feel like we're going to have a 2.0 version of with Billie Piper, because now you're going to be doing how did the Doctor get a face of companion plotline is going to end up being a thing now. And I'm still kind of not so sure how I feel about it. How I feel about Billie Piper potentially doing a storyline similar to what Peter Capaldi when he took on the role as the Doctor. Why did the Doctor get this face storyline 2.0? I'm not too sure how I feel about that, because we've seen it before again, Peter Capaldi, and I feel like we're probably going to see it again with Billie Piper to an extent that probably going to be a little bit more than Peter Capaldi, because of course, Rose Tyler, in terms of the Doctor's perspective, is somebody who loves him, or he's in love with her. So of course it's going to be a little bit more deep. If you're looking at past interactions between the Doctor and Rose, there's a love interest going on between those two. So now you're kind of now it basically paints this image now where how do you explain all that with her as the Doctor, because now we're in a scenario where Billie Piper is essentially going to be the Doctor acting as Rose Tyler. That's pretty much how I'm seeing this. I'm seeing end up being Billie Piper bringing the Rose Tyler character as the Doctor. But then again, I could be. But then again, there is a chance that I could be wrong, and she could do the whole David Tennant scenario where when he was playing two different incarnations, even though he. But then again, he kept the same aspects of 10th Doctor as the 14th Doctor. So in a way, he wasn't necessarily different to the 10th Doctor if you look at it that way. So in a way, Billie Piper's going to have to play this character differently to how she played Rose Tyler in order to make people believe in this in her portrayal. Otherwise, you're going to be in a situation where she's going to be paired to Rose Tyler almost instantly, and I feel like that's going to be a narrative that we're going to see throughout her run as the Doctor, is that she's going to be compared to her companion character Rose Tyler, and I think that's a little gutting for her, because it means that in order for her to convince people that she is the Doctor, she's going to have to be a completely new person to make people believe it. I mean, trust me, I do have faith. Billie Piper's going to try and do the best she can, making herself completely definitive, make herself different to how she was as Rose Tyler. And I'm sure her and Russell are having a lot of discussions right now as to how that's going to work. Hopefully, Russell has a plan in terms of how you're going to explain the whole Doctor's Rose Tyler plot line. Please explain it, Russell, because you're going to have people questioning this basically every week until you do something about it. We haven't got anything to follow up from this because, well, BBC News, from what they're saying in terms of what they're hearing, what's going on with new series or potential Christmas special, they're saying that the discussions on whether BBC wishes to renew their deal or whether other options are being explored are likely to take some time. So there is the potential that we're going to be waiting for some time to be struck between the BBC and another streaming service, or between BBC and Disney, and it's possible that to have a special or a new series starring Billie Piper before 2027 looks unlikely, they're saying. So if that's the case, then that basically means that very well be going into Christmas not basically seeing Billie Piper as the 16th Doctor before the end of the year. So we could be going into the end of the year to this regeneration until probably 2027, which is very concerning, because it means that the problem is that because of this whole BBC Disney deal hasn't been renewed yet, we're kind of in a bubble now where we're now hoping that the BBC is going to get some form of a special plan by the end of the year so that Billie Piper can at least portray the Doctor for her first full story, finally have a proper story as the Doctor, so we can see what she's like as the Doctor. And I think ought to see something from her. It feels like we're gonna have to wait 2 years just to get an explanation. That sucks, because we really could do with an explanation right now. We could really do with a follow-up. We could do with reassurance that BBC's end. It's very concerning if you say so to me, because now we're in a situation where we don't even know how long it's going to be until we see Billie Piper as the Doctor. It may very well be 2027, which means we're essentially waiting 2 years just to find out how the Doctor got Rose Tyler's face. It's very possible that could be the outcome here, but I know Russell's not gonna be allowed to speed things up unless he can somehow make something happen, because we ought to need something, right? We ought to need something from Doctor Who by the end of the year, because I think a lot of Doctor Who fans would love to see a Christmas special by the end of the year, and I'm kind of concerned probably going to miss that deadline soon unless Russell can get people's fingers out of their ass and try and do something. So I like to be hopeful Russell's putting his foot down by me saying this and be like, okay, guys, we need to really get our asses out of our fingers up our asses, out of our asses, and actually do something. Hopefully he's got the message. Hopefully he's putting that. How do I feel in general about Billie Piper being the Doctor? Like I said, I'm not too sure, but I am willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to give it a chance because, well, Billie Piper has evolved since her early days when she was doing the Secret Diary of a Call Girl, when she was being the the glamorous girl, if that's to describe describe anything, but and obviously when she was being the, it's going to take us some time for us to get our heads around her as the Doctor because it's going to take some time to adjust. Yoo-Hoo 20th anniversary special potentially and I feel like it's going to happen eventually. Her interacting with David Tennant's 10th Doctor, maybe even 14th, but I feel like the 10th he should come back as the 10th Doctor because that's the Doctor who Billie Piper obviously is going to remember the most because of, this is another thing I noticed at the end, in the end credits it had Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, somebody else as the Doctor. I'll talk about them very shortly, but it was also really cool, by the way, that she looked at the camera and said, "Oh, hello," like she was being her acting, her basically Billie Piper for a moment, which was really, it was a nice little touch that she said hello to the audience, which is really funny that I felt like that was like a off-screen moment, like trying to say hello, trying to surprise people, like, but also what was really interesting is that, in regards to her coming back, I might as well read a quote here. Russell said this: "Billie once changed the whole television back in 2005. Now she's done it again. It's an honor and a hoot to welcome her back to the TARDIS. But quite how, why, and who is a story yet to be told. After 62 years, the Doctor's Adventures are only just beginning." Which I find interesting he says that because it makes it sound like they know they've got episodes in the pipeline. Maybe there's stuff about to be commissioned that they might not, that hope might not be all lost. Well, we'll talk about that in the news video for those who are curious about that. Yeah, we might as well talk about the story, mightn't we? Because we've talked about the regeneration for quite a bit. So, in terms of the story, well, I actually, to be fair, I didn't mind the finale. I mean, the Rani, obviously, it was really cool to see remember the Rani because obviously Mel saw the Rani back in Time of the Rani, so it was a nice little touch to see Mel recognize Melody, aka Mel Brooke, recognized from the past Avengers they had from Time of the Rani. If you've ever watched that story, you'll know that. But yeah, so that was really cool, and then also the fact that we got to see the return of the hotel woman, the manager from the Time Hotel, who in the Christmas special Joy to the World. So that was really cool that she came back and helped the Doctor out of that tricky situation. So that was a nice little surprise to see her come back, and the fact that she's pregnant with a baby with a guy that she met, and that was really cool that Ncuti got to meet her again because they spent a bit of time in the hotel when. But yeah, then of course we had also some other cool moments. The fact that Belinda Belinda managed to remember who she is, and she believed that Poppy was real, and that Poppy was a real deal. And, at first she thought she was real. Then she backtracked and thought, okay, maybe this wasn't real. But actually, it turned out to be real. It turned out she really did have a daughter called Poppy, happened to be a space baby. Well, it turns out memory of her as a space baby has now become a real-life child for Belinda. So Belinda happened to be so essentially the reason why Belinda wanted to get back home was because, well, she had a daughter, Poppy. In these, like, unseen moments from past adventures, she was telling the Doctor about Poppy, a guy that she met and departed with. So that was really cool that they kept that hidden from most of the series. Had a child called Poppy the entire time. We didn't even know until this story. So it's really, and we all thought she was just a space baby. Turns out she was Belinda's child. And then another big moment, obviously we have to acknowledge, is the fact that Jodie freaking Whittaker shows up again as the 13th Doctor. Who would ever thought that would happen in 2025? Who would ever thought that Jodie Whittaker would return under Russell T Davis's bandwagon? Never saw that. Didn't even think for 1 minute Jodie Whittaker would return. I honestly believe there was no way they were going to get Jodie Whittaker back in Doctor Who. Russell convinced Jodie to come back. I'll be very interested to see what got her to come back as the 13th Doctor, because I love the way that he ripped Jodie, and it kind of bugs me because the way that he writ Jodie Whittaker, he writ her so much better than how Chibnall. It frustrates me because what if Russell T Davis did write Jodie Whittaker during her run? We would have had so many banger stories. I just have this feeling that what if Russell was writing for Jodie Whittaker back? What would it have looked? I think it would have looked 10 times better. Than really cool to see Ncuti interact with Jodie Whittaker, because this is is the first time they've ever interacted as Doctor and Doctor. So this was really cool to see that as a moment. Ncuti's 15th Doctor interact a previous version of the Doctor, the 13th Doctor. So that was really, of course, another moment in the story was the fact that, well, Rani gets eaten up by a skeleton Omega. I wonder what happened to the Rani. They never really explained what happened to the Rani. All we know is that Omega loved to feast from Time Lords. So I would take it as that version of the Rani eaten alive got basically because of Omega. And then the Mrs. Flood version is out there in the wild. Yeah, so chances are there is a chance Mrs. Flood's version of the Rani could return. Maybe Archie Bajami's version of the Rani could potentially also return as the Rani potentially during Billy Piper's run. Potentially, we'll see. We'll see if I feel like Unit will be back. I'm sure there'll be more from Unit. It's looking more and more likely that we're gonna see a new companion, and Ruby's probably not coming back. The way that the Doctor used the Time Hotel to bring everybody, breathe like a sort of back into the minds of Kate Bush and Unit, so that he could use Unit against the Rani. Basically puts everything back to normal. Ruby made a wish to make Conrad a good person again. It isn't an evil person anymore. So that's good that they managed to. But also another pointer is the fact that the Doctor realized that he basically the whole glass smashing on the screen made it sound like that. Yeah, all this time, Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor was essentially a fictional character in a TV show. Basically confirms that plot line now that you had a glass smashing on the screen, like a television smashing. Basically confirms that, yeah, the Doctor was in a TV show the entire time. And as soon as he broke that, then he was basically back to normal. He's back to his normal self again. But overall, I didn't mind the finale. I think the finale went very well. It was a very powerful finale. You would also be surprised by the fact that it was also many goodbyes were coming out of this story. Ruby Sunday is saying goodbye. We might be saying goodbye to Rose Noble. We're not too sure if she's going to stick around. Might be a goodbye for her. We're not too sure. And then we've got goodbye to Belinda, unless Belinda happens to return down the road. Maybe she will. We'll have to wait and see if the Doctor does eventually visit Belinda at some. But I think the big talking point of the story, Ncuti has regenerated into Billy Piper, and now Billy Piper is taken as the 16th Doctor. By the comments that we've seen from Russell and Billy today, makes me hopeful that we are going to see hopefully a Christmas special and a new series commissioned very soon. Or it's probably going to get announced in the coming days, because I feel like those words coming out from them definitely makes it sound like we're probably going to end up finding out pretty soon in the coming days that Doctor Who will be back at Christmas. And I feel like, and if they know the decision, that basically means they're going to have to tell us. But there you go, guys. That is it. That is it for the series. I can't believe it. 8 weeks has flown by and we have a new Doctor. The rumors were true about Billy Piper being the 16th Doctor, but there you go. But yeah, hopefully I didn't go too. I felt like it was going to be a long review, so I apologize for that. Look out for my overview next week, as we're going to look at my favorite stories this series, and then I'm also going to revisit the last 20 previous series from the last 20 years as part of my Doctor Who 20th anniversary special series of specials, revisiting the last 20 years of New Who. But with that said, thanks for watching. Rest of your weekend.